Hey everyone, welcome to Zzzax of Live, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. I'm Mike Mack. Kyle Burbank is here as well.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's good. I'm home.
I
Very
think
weird.
we were 2 weeks ago now was our last episode. I can't remember even what was said on that episode, but I think you were home for the last one at this point, right? I don't remember.
Potentially, I might still been in the other place.
Yeah, very, very possible. I'm home. I am home from a Disney cruise, a very maritime cruise on the Disney Wish, where I'll have some Marvel stuff to talk about. But let's just explain what we're going to be doing here, because obviously we missed last week. We didn't get to talk about the finale, the season finale of Loki. Sorry, I was on a cruise, as I said. But also, we had a theatrical release for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because Marvel planned things out really well and had a season finale and a movie hit theaters on the same day. Thanks for that, Marvel. It was a chaotic day on Thursday. But we're going to be talking about the Marvels as well. So no games this week. We're not going to have time we don't want to hold you hostage the entire time by playing how much is that cameo or a ridiculous draft or anything like that. But we'll get back to that. We'll get back into our normal routine whenever Marvel gives us more stuff to talk about.
January. Oh, well, actually, no. Sorry. What if? I'm sure it'll be mentioned in our news segment, but hopefully we'll have that quote unquote this holiday season.
Yeah, exactly. So Loki season finale, the Marvels recap. There will be spoilers for both. We'll put banners up when we're talking about each topic. But like you said, let's get into our Marvel news from the past week and a half or so. We'll catch up on all the biggest headlines. But actually, I'm going to just real quick recap a little bit about the Marvel stuff that was on board the Disney Wish this past weekend.
Please do.
So first off, like I said, it was chaotic on Thursday. Our cruise left on Friday. We had the Loki finale Thursday night. I went and saw the Marvels in theaters before that. We got on board the ship and was very, very happy to see that the Marvels was showing in the theaters on the ship throughout the course of the entire 3-day cruise. So I think they had like 12 screenings or maybe even more than that. Yeah, it was a lot. So there were plenty of opportunities to see the Marvels. Elemental was another one they were showing a whole lot of. So it's really cool that they have new films, on board the Disney Cruise Line. And
save $12. That totally justifies the cost of the cruise.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. But no, it was really cool to be able to see that. One, because it's just, the movie came out that day. So it was cool that the ship had it already. And two, because my wife had not seen it yet. And it was going to kill me to have to not say anything about this movie throughout the course of that cruise. So I'm really glad we got to knock that out in our first night. And especially since the screening we saw was at like 11 o'clock at night. So it wasn't like it was taking away from anything else. So really cool to have that offering on there. There was also the World of Marvel restaurant.
I think it's plural. I think it's Worlds of Marvel.
Worlds of Marvel, yeah. World of Marvels.
I mean, 2/3 of them are there.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, this was a little bit different. So I got to experience the Disney Wish prior actually to the maiden voyage. So I experienced it right at the beginning and then again this weekend. And so there have been some changes to Worlds of Marvel. The Quantum Encounter experience is still the same. You still have Ant-Man and the Wasp as sort of your host. You're playing around with the interactive element on the table. But there's some new footage in there, and it's a meet and greet. That's kind of used late. It's character dining, right? So it's kind of they stop by the table, say hi, and move on. But it's Spider-Man now as opposed to it being Ant-Man and the Wasp. It has been that for a little bit. I know that changed a little while ago, but it was the first time I got to see it, so that was a lot of fun. Spider-Man was really cool to interact with. And he also has his own little bit in the video show that plays as well. So that was added. I believe, if I remember correctly, and I haven't gone back and checked the tape on this, but I believe there's some more extended interaction between Carol Danvers and I almost called her Iman Vellani, but Kamala Khan, which leads me to think maybe they shot this while they were shooting the Marvels and kind of threw it in there because it definitely felt new to me. So that was really cool to see as well. The Disney Wish is awesome. Absolutely loved it. There were plenty of other Marvel experiences on board, but every time I was scrolling through my schedule, I was like, ooh, Spider-Man meet and greet. oh, that's in the Oceaneers Club. That's for like 12-year-olds and under. I can't go experience that. So yeah, there was a whole lot of that throughout the cruise, but yeah, really, really cool experience.
Nice.
Kyle, when are you booking your Disney cruise? Are you doing one anytime soon?
Well, I don't remember if I've talked about this on the show, but my wife and I just bought a house, so I'm guessing that we're not going to have money for a Disney cruise in the short term.
Yeah, that's a very fair financial assessment. All right, let's get into the news. And actually, our first headline we're going to talk about is the one that you mentioned briefly. We learned that What If Season 2 is in fact coming out this year. They said during the holiday season, right? So the holiday season kind of extends into January. I don't know. They were very vague about it. They didn't give us a date for What If. But this holiday season, it was said that it was going to be coming out this year. We doubted it, or at least I did, especially a few weeks back. I said, I was like, at this point, we would probably have a date, kind of running out of time for it to come out this year. I will give you some credit. You held your ground. You thought, maybe it will still come out, and seems like it is. So
we'll see.
Again, yeah, vague. It's this holiday season. We don't know exactly when it'll be, but season 2 of What If coming soon to Disney Plus.
Can I share a funny story about this? There's another podcast that I do every other week, that Laughing Place. We sponsor the House of Mouse headlines on Disney Coast to Coast. So I help the host Jeff DePauli by writing up a script. And so this was one of the stories we talked about, was What If still coming out. And he called me because I included the stuff about the character that we've already been announced and kind of their backstory. And he called to ask if I was using AI on the script and whether these were real words that I was injecting to make him read. So I thought I had to send him the Marvel.com article and be like, no, that's really their name. And this is really the Confederate, whatever state that they come from.
Yeah, I would imagine what's the new character's name? Kahorti was probably one that may have.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't think of the name off the top of my head, but yeah, it starts with a
K. Yeah, so again, What If season 2 coming this holiday season. We also got some news regarding Echo. I'm not even sure what to make of this, but Marvel announced Marvel Spotlight, this sort of other brand that they're going to release MCU projects under, that are it's basically
not necessarily like one-offs, not necessarily tied to the larger MCU, and more, they didn't say grounded, but they used another word.
I think you're right. I'm not sure what exactly how they worded it, but it seems so weird. Like, I get the idea. I get wanting to do this sort of thing, making projects that people aren't going to necessarily have to have seen all 30 plus movies, and whatever number of series to understand. But then you're releasing this first project under that banner, and it's Echo. And this is a character who has already debuted in Hawkeye, who is the series is going to feature Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock, who have been in, Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home and She-Hulk, and are going to go on into their own other series. It's a very weird way to go about doing this.
I had this conversation last night, and only now am I thinking about it in the way that I'm about to describe. And I don't think it's supposed to make sense for us. We're going to watch it regardless. I think This is a play, because I was also wondering, like, is it really about the tangential part of the MCU that they're talking about? Or is it a way, because this is also the first TVMA, is it supposed to be like, well, we're going to separate this out because this isn't family friendly. This is a more mature MCU. And I think the answer is actually, they want people to watch this that aren't, all in like we are. So you're going to have it on Hulu and Disney Plus, and we're like, oh yeah, because it's more mature. And it's like, well, yeah, but also they want a bigger audience. So then it makes sense to be like, hey, yes, we know that there are connections to the larger universe. Whereas here they're like, don't worry about that. Check the show out, watch it on its own. And I think when I put it that way, I think that does make more sense, even if it is kind of weird. It does feel like they're kind of going against themselves. But maybe if it is just a play to be like, yeah, we know that at this point the MCU is bogged down in so much, but we think you'll like this movie whether you haven't watched a movie since Iron Man or you're all in.
Yeah, no, that is a really good way to look at it. I'm just curious what other projects that kind of feels to me then that they're like, hey, this is it for Echo, right? Like, you're not going to have to watch this in order to understand a movie that she shows up in later on or something, something along those lines. I'd be curious to see what other characters they're willing to do that with. And All in the Game makes a good point that Werewolf by Night fits that label much more than Echo would. But then maybe they want to do something with Werewolf by Night and with Man Thing. And so I don't know. I'm really curious to see how they go from here after Echo. I do think you're right. I think they're trying to open Echo up to a broader audience, hence it also hitting Hulu. And it being the first TVMA, I think this is kind of a good bridge to, it's not going all the way to the Netflix series. We're not going to get to what those were, but I think it's a good sort of bridge between those two there. Speaking of some more TVMA or R-rated Marvel content, we got a slate of delays for MCU films coming up, which I think we anticipated. It is great now that the strike is over, and that they can, first of all, get back to promoting the work that is coming out now, but also get back to creating the work that we're hoping to see in the near future. That being said, Deadpool 3 was delayed. That it was slated for May 3rd, 2024, now July 6th, 2024, which means Marvel doesn't have a film on that beginning of summer, in that window there. So, but I mean, that's probably going to be the case for a lot of studios because a lot of things are going to be pushed back. So we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting, May, June kind of time period next year. But as far as the box office is concerned, Captain America,
the shortest delay of all.
That is the shortest one. Yeah, you're right. Captain America: Brave New World moved from July 6th, which is what Deadpool 3 will be. That is now February 14th, 2025. So we have quite a while. And I thought they were saying that Captain America was further along than Deadpool, and it was, closer to being ready. So it's kind of surprising to see that got pushed back as far as it did, and that we're not going to see it until 2025.
Yeah, I think that's more of a symptom of not wanting to create, like, for a normal movie, you're like, you could just, schedule it a few months later. But because they already have their placeholders set, I guess that's probably why they want to stick with those. And then as far as why they're coming in that order, well, maybe it doesn't matter, or maybe it does. We don't really,
That's true too. Yeah. I was also thinking, like, Marvel has tended to release a movie in November, as we saw with the Marvels. But maybe Disney has something else on the slate too. I don't have the full Disney schedule in front of me. And so obviously they're not going to try and compete with themselves. So,
it also kind of works for them because they wanted to, we know that they've been wanting this kind of space out Marvel a bit more anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is weird though, being in a period where we're in November and we don't have a Marvel movie on the schedule until July. So that feels like that was a long time ago, the last time we experienced something like that.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts was also pushed back. That was December 20th, 2024. That is now July 25th, 2025. And then Blade, what is the record for most times a movie has been delayed? Because I think
New Mutants.
You're right. Yeah, New Mutants probably has that record for the number of delays and also the amount of time it was delayed, because that was like 3 to 4 years that movie was pushed back. It felt like.
I feel like I went to Comic-Con in 2010. I feel like that was probably the first announcement of New Mutants.
Yeah, it was. That was a long delay on that movie. But Blade pushed back from February 14th, 2025 to now November 7th, 2025. So most of the year, Blade was pushed back again. So lots of delays on that. But I mentioned, actors being able to get back to work, getting ready to promote their films again. And it was like the strike ended. What was the deadline? It was like noon or something, like it went into effect.
Midnight.
Was it midnight? You're right. Yeah. It was. And then so like within minutes, it was just like Twitter was just blowing up with a bunch of different things. And Ryan Reynolds took to Twitter to share a look at Dogpool. I guess a new character who's going to show up. Deadpool playing around in the multiverse is going to be ridiculous, much more ridiculous than Doctor Strange or Spider-Man. So this is going to be absolutely crazy. And he shared a tweet with Dogpool. You can check out that
Gary Fisher.
You want to? What was that?
Said he kind of looks like Gary Fisher.
Dogpool does?
Have you ever seen Gary Fisher?
I don't
know. Gary
know.
Fisher's dog. It has the same thing where like the tongue is like out all the
time. Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll send me an image afterwards.
That's what I do.
So yeah, you can check out Dogpool, and I loved Ryan Reynolds' message that that Dogpool is not the hero, but he is causing nightmares for all of the Disney plushie department who has to create these these toys based on this character.
I also appreciate that he put summer 2024 because this was before we had the official delayed. So he was cleverly covering his bases.
Yeah, I'm sure he knew at that point when it was pushed back,
right?
to
But knew that he wasn't supposed to reveal
say
that.
it. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of,
he'd never leak anything related to Deadpool.
Right? No, not him. Speaking of actors being able to get back to promoting their stuff, Iman Vellani showed up at the El Capitan Theater for the, not the premiere, but the
fan event.
Fan event. There you go, for the Marvels. Did you get a chance to watch our video on that?
I didn't, but I have been consuming basically any interview or little thing that she's put up. And let me tell you, Becca was so heartbroken that she didn't get to go to a junket for this.
Mm-hmm.
The day she did what I like to call pulling a Mack, where she flew across the country for the screening and then almost immediately got back on a plane to come back. Mm-hmm. And then that day that she returned home was when they ended the strike.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason that the reviews were delayed and the way they did that is because they're probably holding out hope that they would be able to do a junket and then just fell through. But anyway, yeah, she was so excited to hopefully get to see Iman, and it didn't happen.
Well, if it makes Becca feel any better, I have covered, I don't even know how many junkets at this point, have never actually been to a single physical junket. Everything has all been virtual since I started covering these things. But so yeah, unfortunately, Becca didn't get to ask any questions of Iman Vellani, but she did take the stage at the El Cap and promote the movie before. And her energy was just, it was so much fun, and seeing how excited she was. And she was clearly very nervous to be being interviewed, even as briefly as it was, in front of a crowd. And that's crazy to me that, like, she is now, and we will talk about the movie in greater detail, but she is like one of the biggest MCU stars right now, which makes her one of the biggest stars like in movies. So that's so funny to see that dynamic. But yeah, that was really cool. You can check out that whole opening ceremony on for the fan event on Laughing Place YouTube channel once we're done here. Last bit is Disney Parks related, and also related to the Marvels. They have debuted. It's funny to say the Marvels have debuted because Captain Marvel has been there since the beginning. But now you can meet Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan, who has also been there before, but now back again as a updated costume. Yeah, you're right. She has her. I wish I could remember the name of the planet. But again, we'll talk about it more later on. But she has her costume from there. Also, Miss Marvel debuted in Disneyland Paris in Avengers Campus. So you can see those characters there now. Really cool to see Avengers Campus still just always progressing with whatever new MCU project has come out. But let's get into our first of two breakdowns. We have a lot to talk about here. So let's start off with Disney Plus. Let's go to the season 2 finale of Loki. If you're watching live right now, do you please tell me you have ears for both of our discussions?
Don't read ahead, Mac.
If you're watching live right now, you see that banner up there that says Loki spoilers. As long as that banner is up, we are going to be discussing Loki spoilers. So if you have not yet watched it, maybe go ahead and mute us, wait for that banner to come down, and then rejoin us. Loki season 2 finale. I want to get your overall thoughts. I had an initial reaction, and I think I have
revised.
Revised. I guess I let it breathe like a fine wine, I guess.
Gotta let the tannins out.
Yeah, exactly. So what were your initial thoughts to this season finale?
I thought it was good. I mean, obviously we've seen this type of these types of scenes before and other all sorts of things, like Edge of Tomorrow comes to mind, things like that. But as far as like where it ends up, I thought it was really satisfying and weird and interesting. And I liked it a lot.
Yeah, so I agree. I thought, like, I really enjoyed the finale. I thought the episode, if this was just, taking it for what it is. I thought it was a really enjoyable episode. There was a lot of great character moments. I love the like time loop, sort of sci-fi nerdy stuff. Throw as much of that at me as you can. I'm going to enjoy it. I was initially disappointed in where we left off. And I think now looking back at it, I had come back from the movie, from seeing the Marvels, riding that high of the two scenes we'll talk about later on, wrote about that and then jumped right into the finale of Loki. And so
I did the opposite way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to play a different, have a different effect on how you viewed it. Now that I have digested it more and kind of explored some new comics that not new comics from like 2015, but comics that I had not read yet at the time, I do like it a little bit more. I think they piece things together pretty interestingly. But let's go back. Let's start from the beginning of this episode here. With this episode in particular, you're starting from wherever you want, really. I love the controlled time slipping montage of Loki trying again and again to correct, what went wrong when Timely evaporated however many episodes ago. That was all. It was really funny. I loved it coming together for Loki to become a master of engineering. That's not something you expect from that character. So it led to some really, really funny moments. And, as I said, it was just a really enjoyable string of events there.
Yeah, him basically rushing through past scenes and being like, "You're gonna say,
yeah,
go past it."
Going like kind of summarizing everything really quickly. I love when he runs in and says like, "Miss Minutes, we need your help," and like explains this whole thing, and they're all just like staring at him. That was really funny. The bit where he's telling or asking Obi how long would it take for me to learn everything, and it's like decades, and then Timely says centuries, and then it just pauses and then just says centuries later. So Loki's just literally just learning for 100 or hundreds of years to become as smart as OB, and then showing off that and doing the bit where he's like saying the lines that another character is going to say. So classic time travel type stuff there. Really love that. Yeah, exactly. And then we get, I think, something I didn't expect to see in this finale, or really this season in general, and that's that He Who Remains played a really big role, and apparently was still playing a really big role. When you're dealing with a character who is more or less the god of time, him dying there doesn't really mean anything to him because he's still living on another timeline and he's still pulling all the strings, and we saw that play out. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and it also made me wonder whether they did shoot some of that beforehand. Like, obviously it's their job to have continuity and match scenes, and they know how they did them the first time if they need to shoot there again. But I was like, yeah, I wonder how much they knew in advance and decided to do these things.
Yeah, I am curious about that too, is like how much of this story was planned out, like when they released season 1, did they, was how much, like you said, how much of this was shot already and things like that. So, but yeah, it was cool to see. It made He Who Remains. It's interesting because they're like this character is so many different variants, and you see him from so many different angles. Victor Timely is not an imposing figure. He's not an intimidating villain, but He Who Remains really, really is. And so you see these different angles of what is essentially the same character, but kind of not. And it's cool to see, especially coming off of Quantumania. I think a lot of people were kind of let down by Kang and how easily he was defeated. Sorry, spoilers for Quantumania if you haven't seen that one yet. But I think to see He Who Remains sort of back in power kind of revives the energy around that character. There was also an interesting dynamic there with Sylvie as well. So there's he's trying to stop Sylvie from killing He Who Remains because he realizes at this point there's nothing he can do. He needs He Who Remains to live, and he then realizes he has two options. He Who Remains tells him, you kill Sylvie because you're gonna have to kill her in order to stop her from killing him, and let him continue his work to sit on the throne at the end of time and continue what he's doing. Loki proposes that instead he's going to break the loom, which has been a fail-safe and is doing what its job was to destroy all the other timelines, leaving only the sacred timeline. And so if he breaks the loom, he's going to cause that, whatever they were however they were describing that war with all of the Kang variants. So Loki would then essentially cause that war himself. And so he's left with this dilemma of, how do you handle this? And especially, I think it felt like to me, I'm watching that, I'm like, he doesn't have to kill Sylvie. Like, I feel like there's a middle ground here somewhere. But I felt like that's what the driving factor was, is that, he doesn't want to kill Sylvie. There's still this energy between them, which again is still weird because it's him. But so yeah, there was a whole lot of character-driven stuff between those two, and then again between Loki and He Who Remains, which also Loki sort of develops those time powers. Like, he manages to pause time. And there's this element of like, we don't know how many times he's gone through this, how many times he's had this conversation. And so it's a really cool dynamic of power between him and He Who Remains. And you don't even really know which one's the more powerful one at that time.
Yeah, no, I thought that was very interesting. And yeah, you kind of, when He Who Remains kind of goes through it, you're like, just feel kind of helpless in the moment. You're like, oh, yeah. So anything you think you're going to be able to outsmart him is not going to matter. So where is this going to go? And, I guess you could say Loki doesn't exactly outsmart him, because I think it's kind of impossible to, but.
Right. Well, and that it's funny because now I didn't even think about this until you were just saying that, but you have these two gods essentially at the end of time, and it goes back to the Ouroboros thing, right? Like, it's like once one of them makes a move, it just kind of keeps looping. They know each other's moves. Nobody can ever get the upper hand. So it's just that same theme that we've seen countless times now in this season. We get it. So Loki realizes what the dilemma is. He wants to go get some advice. So he slips back to the moment where Mobius was interrogating him in season 1. And we get a whole lot of Mobius backstory that I was not expecting to get, far beyond just jet skis. So Mobius explains that he was a hunter. Well, he was asking for a friend at first, but he was a hunter that hesitated to prune an 8-year-old. I think he said it was a child who was a variant. He hesitated for just a moment, and then that led to the death of a bunch of other hunters. But his partner stepped in, and she pruned the variant, fixed the timeline and everything. Turns out his partner was Renslayer. And so you kind of see the trajectory of what happened with those two characters. You go think back to season 1 and the sort of power dynamic between Renslayer and Mobius. And so this explains a whole lot. So that was interesting to get that in that moment, because this is all, it's really heavy on Loki. And then you get this moment of, well, here's everything about Mobius, and it helps you to understand that character more.
Yeah, and it was cool that they kind of quickly got through the, shifting the conversation, like instead of the trajectory that scene originally took, him being able to kind of diffuse that line of questioning and segue it into his own thing. I thought that it was well done. Yeah,
it fits with, it's Mobius in that moment, and it's Loki as we know him now. So it's like that conversation worked really well. Fitting with those two characters. He then goes to see Sylvie in the moment where the branched timeline was fading all around them, and explains to her what's going on, that he has to save He Who Remains. And in order to do that, he has to kill her. I loved that her line was like, well, I'm not going to give you my blessing to go and kill me. So yeah, then that kind of, that is the big, climax of this episode, right? Is what it comes down to, him facing off with Sylvie. And so you think you're about to go and get to this, and then Loki has another idea. So he slips back one more time to the temporal loom before that explosion, radiation storm, whatever you want to call it. And he decides to just go ahead and walk out there, which was kind of funny. You watched Victor Timely struggle to push his way through that radiation so many times, and Loki just very casually strolls down the gangway, just has no issues with it at all. Especially after he knew, like, he learned everything from OB, so like he probably could have just gone and done that much quicker earlier. So he knew how to fix any problems. But we watch him walk out there and dramatically transform his costumes, as the children of Odin tend to do in big, intense moments. Love the new look, by the way. Love that very comic accurate costume that he put on there. He gets out to the loom and he breaks it, but then realizes that the timelines are dying. All of the branch timelines are dying, and so he magics them all together and essentially attaches himself. Looks, any Stranger Things fans out there might have thought this also. Kind of looks Vecna-esque with all the vines coming out of him. But so he has these vines of time, kind of walks off up onto his own new throne. And I don't know, what were your thoughts on this? Because to me in the moment, I was like, this is cool. I don't know where they're really going with it.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure either, like what the lighting up of the the branches meant. And then I was like, well, I can't wait for Mac to tell me what this this character is called, or what comic it comes from.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Is this was a comic I was not really familiar with. This was a tie-in story to the Secret Wars comic arc in 2015. Which obviously we are leading up to Secret Wars in the MCU. This was Loki, Agent of Asgard, was the comic series. And this is where Loki becomes the god of stories. So he, it's kind of hard to explain. It's very complicated, spacey,
complicated.
Interstellar kind of comic arc that gets pretty confusing. But basically, yeah, he is the god of stories. So he weaves these stories that are happening on infinite timelines. And so, and in the comics, he deals with another version of himself, basically a Loki who has become king and is a big villain. And so they're, butting heads the entire time. I don't think we're going to see that. I wouldn't count on it, at least. But yeah, so that is, like I said, that ties into Secret Wars. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Loki having some sort of role to play. I would think not really as like, an action kind of character. He's going to be more of like an advisor to the Avengers, sort of providing, or, even weaving the story in any way that he can to assist. So that's my guess. But yeah, so that is the comic arc that
it reminded me a bit of like Red Skull. Like,
yeah, sure.
Oh, I do this now. I'm in charge of this.
Yeah, no, that is a good comparison, actually. Loki, I would say, is a little bit more powerful, though, as we see. He hears, everything that's going on at all times. He's kind of Heimdall-esque, actually. Kind of sees everything that's going on.
Heimdall or Watcher?
The Watcher is another good comparison. Although the Watcher can't interfere. Well, I guess in What If he kind of does anyway, but but yeah, so Loki will have, I would think, has that role to play in Secret Wars. Although, did you see the Tom Hiddleston interview that has everybody talking?
I did not.
It wasn't anything big. It's nothing, basically he called this finale, I forget his exact words, but like
Swan song.
The culmination. He didn't say swan song, but he said the culmination of 11 years of storytelling for this character. And so
that means nothing. I mean, it does.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
But everybody is reading that as, well, Tom Hiddleston's done. That's the end of Loki. We're not going to see him anymore. It's the MCU. We're already talking
Endgame
about...
was the culmination of...
Right. Yeah. We're already talking about seeing Robert Downey Jr. back, and his character actually died in that film. So I wouldn't write off anybody, especially not Loki. You could definitely see him. Loki's died how many times in the MCU? So you can definitely see that character.
We were told no more resurrections, and then he was immediately resurrected.
No resurrections this time. I thought it was interesting too, though, that after we see Loki, take his throne, the shot kind of zooms out, and we see all these vines, and it looked to me like it takes the shape of a tree. like Yggdrasil, the world tree that they talk about in Thor. It's the 9 realms taking the form of this tree. So I thought that was really interesting visually. I'm not sure if they were trying to tell us like, well, this is what Loki is now. He is sort of this god that creates all time and space. And I was happy to write in my recap of the episode, like, that's really going to go to his head. So yeah, it was just an interesting visual to kind of throw that tree image in there. After that is all done, the story is completed from this point of view, at least. We then get back to the TVA, where they know this war is coming now, right? Like, this is, He Who Remains is done. He's not holding his variants at bay anymore. And so they're monitoring. They're keeping an eye on all of these variants of He Who Remains. And Mobius specifically mentions, B-15 asks, did any of them know we exist yet? And so that's the interesting thing is, I guess the TVA is basically the seat of power. And as soon as the Kangs or the He Who Remains is realize that is there, he's who remain. As soon as they realize that's there, that's what they're going to start fighting over. And so Mobius tells her, no, they don't know that they exist. But there was one on I forget what he said, a offshoot realm of 616 that caused a ruckus, but they took care of it.
Maybe 616 adjacent or something.
Yeah, something like, I think that's what it was, 616 adjacent realm. And talking about Kang and Quantumania, making a ruckus in the quantum realm. So reference there, but not much else in terms of what's to come with He Who Remains variants. We do see Hunter B-15, Casey. They go to the war room. They're rebuilding the TVA, creating a new hierarchy. I would guess the next time we see the TVA, B-15 is probably the one in charge. Just seems like the character arc for her, but we'll see, if we even get to the TVA again, who knows? OB, we see open up a box of new guidebooks, just, I guess, so they can sell 2 different colors of them in the parks at some point. But then we see as he opens that, I thought it was interesting the way they did this is he looks at the new guidebook. Then we cut to young Victor Timely working at, in his house the way we saw him the first time. And you don't see a package get delivered in the window this time. So it's as if they're cutting him out of it. So, which I have so many questions that are just going to blow up my head that, time travel stuff. Doesn't that break the loop with him and OB? I don't know. Can't get into it because it'll just completely melt me down. So yeah, they're cutting him out of that.
Well, no, I think if the work that he wrote about the loom for the TVA guidebook was probably influenced by Victor Timely, but that's not how the loom, if it even is a loom anymore, works. It's all Loki. So you don't necessarily need him. It's a different, the Loki meeting OB is probably the new cycle.
Okay. So what you're saying is everything in the guidebook now is completely different for the TVA, and it's just coming from OB because they don't need Timely's work.
Or it's coming from Loki and OB, maybe just OB, but yeah, maybe Loki OB.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way. That's a better way to look at it than what would have just completely broken my brain. We do also see Renslayer. Finally, I thought this was going to be where we started last week's episode. Instead, it's basically where we end this week's episode is Renslayer waking up in the void. What I thought was interesting though, is she, you hear the growling and that purple glow. So I guess Alioth does still exist there in the void and is maybe serving some sort of purpose, maybe still working for He Who Remains. I'm not sure. I got to point out this comment from All in the Game who just says time travel makes my head hurt. Yeah, there's just too much to think about sometimes. So yeah, we do see that Renslayer is there in the void. How she gets back, if she gets back, that remains to be seen. And then we see Mobius return home. He goes back to his timeline, which now I'm not sure how this is supposed to work, because I thought he would be going back to take the place of Dawn, but he then watches Dawn with the kid. Maybe there's a different timeline he has to take the place of. I don't know. But so yeah, Sylvie shows up there too. He tells her he's just going to stay there for a while and let time pass.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a little far-fetched. I can't imagine anyone wanting to go back to Cleveland.
Ouch. Wow.
Thank you. Okay, I lived there for 9 months and my wife is from there.
And for the record, the one time I was there, I do agree with you.
The Browns
But
beat the Ravens this week, so it's all
yeah,
good. Just
yeah, so he is going to stay there, and he tells Sylvie he's just going to let time pass, which is of course that perfect line for them to end on. Sylvie before that does say she doesn't know where she's going to go, but she's going to go. She's going to go live her life finally with free will, at least until
work at the McDonald's again, probably.
Yeah, yes, that is the peak of free will. You are allowed to work at a McDonald's if you choose. Hashtag not a sponsor.
Hashtag where my grimace slides.
So yeah, then like I said, we end on that line of Mobius saying, "I'm going to let time pass." You hear that echo, and then you see Loki kind of hearing that happen as he's holding the many vines of stories on his throne. And that's it. That is where the episode ends. I was very disappointed to not get a post-credit scene in this. I'll be honest. That is where I left off. And again, that's coming off of the high of what the Marvels left us with. We didn't get any sort of post-credit at all for Loki. So, did you feel the same way in the moment?
Yeah, I didn't feel it was quite as egregious as last week's, where I felt like there was like a huge break. But yeah, I'm happy with where it left off. Like I'm always happy to get more, but I thought last week's they were really teasing us. Whereas this one, I'm like, that's a good place to end it.
That's fair. Yeah, and looking back on it, it definitely is. I still think you could have it wouldn't have made any consequence to anything that's going on. Like there's nothing holding them back from doing this. It's also not necessary to do this. But I think just a scene very similar to like Age of Ultron, where you saw Thanos, grab the gauntlet, just something like that with one of the He Who Remains variants, any single one of them getting a whiff of the TVA. That's all I wanted. Just something like that, letting us know, yes, this war is
there
definitely
might have been
coming.
a reason why that didn't happen.
Well, yes. Yeah, that's definitely possible. And we'll see where that goes. But that's all I was hoping for. And I was a little bit disappointed. Again, like I said, now looking back at it, I didn't dislike it in any way. I definitely thought it was a great episode. Very good finale. The series has been, I still think, the strongest the MCU has done. And I'm definitely interested to see. Now, I will say this too. I will be disappointed if that is actually the end of Loki. If we don't see him again, and that's just where we write this character off, then I'd be a little bit disappointed. I want to see something come of this. But we'll see. Well, we probably have years to wait for that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else on Loki before we move on to our
I'm going to take off the headband. So I guess.
All right, officially, it's becoming official now. Once the other ears go off, we are done talking about Loki spoilers. The banner is down. We are going to get into the Marvels, the new MCU film that has hit theaters, and there are the Captain Marvel ears going on.
Higher, further, faster.
Perfect. Great for the
CBS audio. Receipt on the side there.
If you are just listening, you can head to the Laughing Place YouTube channel when you are safely at home and no longer driving your car, which is probably how you're listening to this, and check out Kyle's ears for each. For each. How many? Did you ever expect to have someone say, "Check out Kyle's ears" on Laughing Place YouTube channel?
I did not, but I would like to thank Becca for thinking of this bit right before we went on. I was like,
nice.
We do have appropriate attire for both of these.
Yeah, I wasn't about to change my shirt for both, so just stuck with Miss Marvel. So let's get into the Marvels here. Again, the banner is up. Spoilers for the Marvels if you haven't seen it yet. Well, actually, if you're listening live or watching live, this is where we're going to end this episode for this week, really. So you can come back and check it out later after you have seen the Marvels. Overall thoughts on the movie, Kyle?
I thought it was a lot of fun. And, a lot is going to be made about this movie for a lot of different reasons. But I think it was interesting what they tried to do. Because, I was trying to talk about this with Becca and try to see if this made sense. But I feel like this is the first one where, as if you didn't watch the Disney Plus series, you're just completely lost. Like there's been obviously like tie-ins, like, Wanda's storyline in WandaVision is very much a part of of Doctor Strange,
Madness.
or
Yeah.
like um wow, I just forgot her name, but Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character,
Right.
we meet her again. It's the second time we meet her in Black Widow, but that was supposed to be reversed anyway, so that barely
True.
matters. But
Yeah.
this, like, if you're not familiar with Kamala Khan, they're gonna throw you enough info so that you can like kind of catch up, but also F you. Like it does not care about you being up to date on this character. It's like, no, you have a whole thing to go. You have a lot of homework to do for this. And so I do wonder, like, as popular as the shows are on Disney Plus in a Disney Plus capacity, if that could be a reason why the box office isn't quite there, because among all the other challenges that Marvel has these days, including with the strike and everything, not being able to promote this movie, if there is like a larger population of people that only go see the movies versus diehards like us that are going to watch everything. Right. So I thought that they did a good job at, as someone who has watched everything, I appreciated the way that they just kind of jumped in and brought these characters together really quickly. And then, got the show on the road. But I could see why that would also be detrimental to people who didn't see the original material.
Yeah, I totally get that. And now, as you're saying that, I realize it'd be interesting to look at the numbers of, how many people are seeing a movie in the theaters versus how many people are watching the Disney Plus series that might be tied to it, and just compare those two. But yeah, no, that you're absolutely right. And I totally agree too. I appreciate that Marvel does this at this point, because you're trying to grow your audience, sure. But I think people who are going to see the movie for the most part are going to go see it, right? Like whether or not they've seen the Disney Plus show, and they're just going to go and enjoy the action and the comedy that Marvel has been known for. So yeah, I as someone who watches all of this religiously and is watching it multiple times, I do appreciate not really getting a full recap. And there were scenes kind of thrown in there, especially for Monica there and her story. There was some stuff thrown in there.
Yeah. I think they did the exposition for that sort of stuff well, both for viewers and in terms of these three characters coming together. I thought that was all actually handled pretty reasonably.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't feel like at any time that I was just sitting through a recap and looking at the time, waiting for it to, wondering when the movie was actually going to start. No, they really jumped right into it. And I will say, so we both enjoyed this movie. I really liked it a lot. Probably more than I expected to, just based on the reports, a couple of weeks before the movie came out and saying like the late reshoots and the story was a mess. The only negative I have is that I do think the story was a little bit, not that it was a mess, but it was kind of a secondary thought. I think this movie was, hey, let's get Brie Larson, Tiana Paris, and Iman Vellani on the screen at the same time, and we'll go from there. We'll figure out the rest after that. People will love it. And they're right. Like, I think their chemistry, these characters together was fantastic. The story was there. It was fine. It was very basic. Yeah. It was a villain, with a MacGuffin that even they had to jump around and stop them from.
But also, I have questions about certain things in there. But yeah, like the way that this movie is, the main thing is solved. Like, really, you didn't ever think of that,
right? Yeah, yeah. So there, the story was not the best. The villain, again, another thing too that people are complaining about, saying Dar-Ben was a very lackluster villain. I agree, but also I think she did the job. I think that's all she was there for, was to basically to give them a reason to come together. And I also feel like, they made it a point to make this movie a little bit shorter. It was an hour and 45-minute runtime, which is short for an MCU movie. Actually, I guess just short for movies in general these days, right? Like everything tends to be 2 hours or, right around there. So yeah, it was a little bit shorter. I felt like they could have given Dar-Ben more time to breathe, give that character some more context, then she might have stood out a little bit more. But I think she did the job. I think she was fine. I think Zawe Ashton was great, in what she was given to do.
We probably won't get to see her with Tom Hiddleston in the.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who knows? You can't really write off any character ever, but especially multiverse. But yeah, so I think she was fine. Iman Vellani, right? Like that's if somebody was to ask me 2 words on how to describe this movie, yeah, Iman Vellani. That was it. She was just so good.
I was so giddy. Like I was excited for her to meet Carol Danvers. Like anytime,
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
scene where her parents are yelling at her and she realizes that Captain Marvel was in her house. Just the like seeing her trying to contain her joy just made me so happy. And I
yeah.
like later when she's like, "I'm sorry, I came out a little strong." Like I thought that they did just the right amount of like fangirling from her. Like it
Agreed.
never got old for me.
No, yeah, I totally agree. And it's like her energy throughout is just infectious. You feel what she's feeling. And I think it's because she's us, right? Like if we were there, even like on the set, right? Like not even in space with Captain Marvel. I'm talking about being on the set with Brie Larson. We would have that same energy and just be like, like I don't know how to control my smile right now. But yeah, so it was great, you know, to see her. And this was her first movie. So to see her on the big screen for the first time, you know, was really, really great. I got the vibe that she is going to have a hand in Marvel storytelling for a long time going forward after this movie.
Is that because she's basically Nick Fury, or because she's writing a comic of the character she plays, or
all of the above? Yes, no, I think you know the fact that she is writing comics tells you she can tell a story. I think that she's becoming such a fan favorite. Her character has a huge role in the story going forward. Why wouldn't you hand her the reins a little bit and let her assist at least in telling these stories in the MCU? So I think she has a huge role to play, and I'm excited for it. I want to say too, Tiana Paris and Brie Larson, also fantastic. They were great. They were all 3 of them worked off of each other perfectly. Samuel L. Jackson, of course, that goes without saying. He was hilarious as always. So yeah, he was great. The whole cast, Kamala's family, and I'm sorry I don't remember the actors' names, for her mother and father and her brother, they were all awesome too. Any other standouts in your mind? Anybody else come to mind?
No, I did like having the cons there the whole time.
Yeah,
That was
they drove a lot
fun.
of the comedy of the movie, which was great.
They do, but then I also really loved the part near the end where her mom just really accepts like you have a larger purpose, I need to
Yeah,
let you go, to some degree. I
yeah,
thought that
yeah,
was, you know, really sweet. And yeah, this in Becca's review, she's like kind of what we're saying, like the story is kind of an afterthought, but it's really about the relationships. And
yeah,
she said,
absolutely.
and I agree with this, that they really nailed all of the relationships in this movie.
Yeah, it's a very good point too. Yeah, because you are seeing these. You know, we're obviously focused mostly on the 3 heroes, but you are seeing these relationships they have with other characters, you know, develop and play out as we watch this movie. I think one of the things that we have to talk about too is the action in this movie, which I was surprised to see. I thought this was going to be, and I was right in thinking it was going to be a lighthearted, kind of fun, goofy movie. But I thought the action was some of the best we've seen in the MCU, probably the best since Shang-Chi, I think is what I would say. Because the fight scenes were so cool. The body switching was done so well. Really, really great. So yeah,
Yeah, it was a good montage scene too, seeing like
yeah,
how they can master it, basically.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, the action was fantastic. They had the big, you know, explosions and the big CGI battles and stuff like that, but there was a lot of really like close up hand to hand stuff too that was surprising to see and was really, really well done. But as you mentioned, that montage that, you know, was one of the funniest scenes in the movie. This was one of the funniest MCU movies in a long time too, I think. 2 lines. Sorry, 2 lines come to mind for me that I thought were really funny. The first, when Kamala and Monica are falling from the sky and they switch at the last second, and it's Carol, he hits the ground, and they're all panicked, worrying if Kamala's going to hit the ground and you know just splat there. And they see Carol, and Nick Fury just goes, "Oh, it's cool, it's Carol." That was perfect. And then they just cut away from that immediately. It was like that was such a funny line. And then the second one is later on when they're on the Saber station up in space, and Kamala's dad Yusuf is talking to one of the Saber agents. And he's like, "How old are you?" And he's 307. And Amir immediately just goes, "Wow, same age."
Also, all that advice he was giving about index funds versus individual stocks and having a 401k and a Roth IRA, he's right. Listen, that's legit advice.
So there you go. Take your financial advice from Yusuf Khan from the Marvels.
And also, we've already drafted best musical moments in the MCU, but we might need to redraft. When Becca said that there was a scene set to a certain show tune, I knew immediately which one it was. So I was glad to see that borne out.
Not where I thought you were going with that, but yeah, we can because there's two musical related scenes actually. But yeah, we'll want to talk about the Fleur kittens then, because that's clearly what you were getting at.
Yeah, that was kind of a similar vibe to Come a Little Bit Closer. We're just not people dying, but people being eaten by kittens, while memory from cats. Not this is actually one of my pet peeves. It's not called memories, it's memory from cats. Yeah, I thought that was very silly and very fun.
I never knew you were such a big fan of cats. First,
I'm not. I don't know anything else except for the word Jellicle and that song. And you know what? I actually know the lyrics of that song not because of cats, but because of Funny People, where Maud Apatow performs it.
I have to go back to that movie. It's been a long time since I saw that one. Yeah, the Fleur kitten scene was hilarious, and that's honestly, again, my experience watching this and then watching it again the next day on the cruise, and our table mates at dinner were all planning to go see the movie after we had. So it was like each day somebody else was coming to me and just like, yeah, the scene with the kittens was the best scene. Like everybody loved that one so much. So that was really funny to experience it that way. But yeah, the Fleur kitten stuff was hilarious. I can't believe I didn't see it coming. This is my whatever the opposite of galaxy brain is. It's like I'm thinking too big for the MCU. I'm thinking about like, oh, what does this little Easter egg possibly mean as I'm watching this movie? And you see these eggs start to show up in the space station, and they, it turns out it's the Fleur kittens. And I knew they were coming. No, and I knew they were coming too. And I'm just like, oh, what are these? Is this the Brood? Are they bringing in this other alien? Like, what are they doing?
Can I tell you how the stupid way that I got spoiled on this? We wrote about the AMC things.
Yeah.
So seeing that they come in that little like pink egg thing,
oh, you're right.
That's how I was able to put it together instantly.
Yeah. You're right. I'm pretty sure I wrote that story.
I think you probably did.
I really should. I'm just thinking about too many other Marvel things in the moment. But yeah, so the Fleur kitten, that was the positive of the musical side of things here. But there was another scene. They go to this planet, and again, I can't remember the name of the planet. But their language is song, and so they have this musical thing going on. What were your thoughts on that?
It was okay. I like her dress a lot. Like that's going to be a popular thing to wear for Comic-Cons or
absolutely
D23.
And her universe is already selling it, so
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that guy is a big Korean star. Is that the deal?
I believe so, and I cannot remember which project he was from. But yes, he was a big star that people were excited about. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the musical element of it, but I think they did it just enough. I think they did it to get the gags. You got Kamala and Monica playing off of it really well. Led to some of the funniest moments in the movie. So that I think they did it, and then they cut it and did it in a funny way too, where she was like, hey, can we stop singing? Can we just talk? And they're like, wait, he can just talk now? And they're just like, yeah, he's bilingual. And then they move on.
And he is bilingual because he's speaking English, and that's not his native language.
That's fair. But yeah, so they played that off very well, I think. Could I have done without it? Sure. Did I hate it? No. I think it was done to the proper amount. I think they handled it well. Anything else from the main story? I do want to touch on the fact that we saw the Supreme Intelligence in a flashback, and they gave it a very comic accurate look, which was really cool. So who was the actress? Oh no, who played Annette Bening? Was that her in Captain Marvel? Is that the name I'm thinking of? Yeah. Okay. So yes, she played the Supreme Intelligence there. She was also, Marvel, but, played the Supreme Intelligence, like representing her. And we see the comic accurate, like the big face in the computer screen type thing for just a moment before Carol blows it up. So I thought that was really cool. And then also Kamala is going to be used as a device to sell merchandise as well. And like we talked about this a while ago, we saw the Cosmorod for sale in Epcot. You could buy that. That's the Ronan the Accuser's weapon. That's the weapon of the Accusers from the Kree. And as Carol refers to it as the universal weapon, and that's what it's known as in the comics. And Kamala just goes, "Oh, I was thinking Cosmorod." I'm like, what they've packaged it as. So yes, there you go. So that's probably going to sell a lot more.
We're not going with Professor Marvel.
Right, yeah. That was a fun bit too, was her trying to come up with a new name for Monica, like the code name for Monica, and never quite landing on Photon or Spectrum.
Her opening comic scene was really fun too.
Oh, it was too. And I meant to say this too. They showed that on YouTube recently. I saw that whole bit. There was a it's Sloth Baby Productions, right? And I could never get back to finding it because there are like 12 different fake Sloth Baby Productions on YouTube. So but yeah, they did release that on YouTube earlier. So that was really cool. I liked that they got back. It felt small, right? In the moment, like you were still in that that Miss Marvel vibe, and then things progressed to become this much bigger movie.
Twinsies.
Yeah. All of that was really great. So you got a lot of that Kamala Khan humor in there.
The thing I wanted to ask you about is the Skrulls.
Yes, I am very curious myself about this.
Okay. Do we know that they're, so I assume that the leftover ones went over to New Asgard. Did we previously hear about that? Because like as I was thinking about it, I was like, wait, did they say something about that in Secret Invasion?
That's a good question. I'd have to go back and see that.
Probably. Well, yeah, I don't know.
This has to take place post Secret Invasion, right? Because this is Nick Fury has gone back up into space.
Unless this takes place before. I assume it would take place after, so they wouldn't have said anything. But I was like, wait, was there like a throwaway line about some New Asgard one? It almost sounds possible.
We should mention too, Tessa Thompson did show up as King Valkyrie, which we did see in the final trailer that she was going to be in the movie.
So you also don't know why these Skrulls were not on Earth, or why this planet that they were on is not an acceptable one for the ones who are.
Well, even beyond that, I think there's where we left Secret Invasion. The sentiment on Earth is, we don't like Skrulls. We don't want Skrulls here. So how are they going to feel about New Asgard welcoming in however many thousands of Skrulls they just did? New Asgard is sort of this home for a whole bunch of different races from all over the planet or all over the galaxy. So it's an interesting dynamic there. I don't know where they're going to go from there, or if they're even going to touch on it again. I think maybe after the reception to Secret Invasion, they might just say, let's just kind of sweep the Skrulls under the rug, and that's going to be the end of it. But we'll see. I hope they do come back to it because it'd be really interesting. But yeah, I'm not sure what they were, or if they were setting anything up there. All right, I think that's it as far as the
core of the movie.
The core of the movie, because we would have a mid-credit and a post-credit scene to talk about, but really it felt like the last scene of the movie was a post-credit scene, right? Like it felt very much like that to me.
Yeah. Also, sorry, I forgot something before we get to this. I was a little bit worried for a moment when, Monica's talking about how there's this thing. And it's like, oh, that's a different reality, and it's about to spill in. And then I did think that they were just gonna, seal it up and be like, I'm just kidding. And that would have been very similar to No Way Home.
Yeah.
So I was glad that that's not quite what happened.
I do like that they're approaching the multiverse from all these different angles, right? Like you've got Doctor Strange, you've got Spider-Man, you've got now the Marvels. The TVA is also doing it in a completely different way. So I like that they're going to all come together eventually and realize like, oh yeah, we've had this same experience. We've noticed something like this happening. And, so it's not just like it's pulling just from No Way Home. Like it felt like it was going to eventually, but so I like how they're doing this now. All right, let's talk about the first final scene, I guess is how I'll put it. This movie closes out with, I'll say this too, because this scene excites me more than the other one we're going to discuss, because that one I kind of knew was coming, at least to an extent.
Especially once I saw a headline that was tried to avoid a spoiler by leaving out a word. I'm like, yeah, I can see what that blank is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super helpful. Thanks for that. No, but they Marvel did release a teaser that, see what happens next, and then the X just kind of hovered for a little bit longer. So like we know something X-Men related is coming. But
yeah, also Kamala being a mutant.
Yes, that's I mean, it all ties together. Well, although funnily enough, that didn't have anything to do with it. But she actually is involved in the other scene, the one that excited me the most, because I saw this movie at 3:45 in the afternoon. I was in a theater with like 12 other people that were mostly silent for the entire movie, which kudos to them, the great movie experience. But you see this scene, Kamala mentions something about like basically working with a team. And she says, speaking of that, and then we cut to this door, and then you see a silhouette and a bow. And I immediately audibly gasped and made the only sound that was made in that theater the entire time. Did not expect to see Kate Bishop walk into that room, into this movie in any way. So that was really exciting. And yes, she throws some pizza to Lucky, which was great. And then there's Kamala in the shadows in her chair. And I loved, by the way, the experience seeing it on the cruise. The theater erupted in laughter for that. So I was like, okay, I'm seeing some Marvel fans here for this showing, because they immediately recognize that this is just the Nick Fury scene from Iron Man.
You think you're the only teenage kid hero out there?
Yeah, it was so good. And she just
23.
completely rips off that line, which, by the way, we started watching Hawkeye again yesterday, and Kate does say she was 22 at that point. So there you go. A year later, we're getting into this movie. So yeah, we see her play off the whole Nick Fury line. She she says she even goes into you just became part of a much bigger universe, which is just me right now. But so that was.
Did you know that Ant-Man has a daughter?
Yeah, do you know that Ant-Man has a daughter? Daughter was a really awesome line.
She's got the iPad.
Yeah, she has the new iPad, which I love that she says, like, she's like, where did you get that? And she's like, it was under my couch. And when they were cleaning things up at the end, makes sense. It would have just been like left there. So that was a really fun bit between these two characters, mentioning Cassie, not by name, but Ant-Man's daughter, getting her in the mix too, get America Chavez in there. This is going to be such an awesome next wave of heroes. I can't wait to see what they do with the Young Avengers.
Have you seen the interview with them on that came out a couple days ago? I think it was like THR.
Oh, no, I did not. No,
so they were talking about this, and apparently it was one of those things that they didn't know if they were going to shoot it or not. And she said originally there was going to be a different Young Avenger, but then when she finally got the script and saw that like what it was, she immediately rewatched Iron Man and texted Nia in all caps like, I cannot believe the honor that this is crazy.
She's the best. She's just us in that role. It's amazing. It's so fun to see. But yeah, and her working with Haley Steinfeld and with Catherine Newton and with Xochitl Gomez and whatever other Young Avengers they decide to throw in there. Riri Williams. Yeah, are we going to get Speed and Wiccan in there? Are we going to get Patriot in there? We saw Eli Bradley in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. By the way, I did see an interesting theory. So Iron Lad is another character that's in one of the core Young Avengers. Oh, Hulkling too. I have to mention him. But Iron Lad is another one, and Iron Lad is a variant of Kang, right? We have seen a young Victor Timely. That's a possibility. I mean, you could see something along those lines. So. Be really interesting to see if they go down that road. It would be a way for them to tie Young Avengers into Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars or whatever road they're going down in the future. So yeah, absolutely love this scene. That was the one that I absolutely did not see coming. Really, really loved it. It was really exciting. My heart was just pounding during those first credits. Then after that, because I was like, what are they possibly going to throw at me now? Even though I knew it was going to be X-Men related. So let's talk about the mid-credit scene. Were you, first of all, I'll say
emphasis on the mid. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, it was because there was no post credit.
No, I know. I'm using mid like a Gen Zer.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay,
but I'm kidding.
Yes, I hope so, because it was a very exciting one. But it was interesting that we didn't get a post credits. I expected them to just throw like a joke, like they normally do, like a shawarma at the end there, which could have literally done that. Could have had the three Marvels eating shawarma at the end. Didn't have to make any sense continuity wise, but it would have been hilarious. So we get this mid-credit scene, and it is we saw Monica get left in this other dimension. She had to basically sacrifice herself to
Another new galaxy, intergalactic planetary.
That what I was delighted to see that was in the movie. By the way, I was very happy with that.
It was their anthem. I would have been. They must have just paid to license it in like infinite plays.
Right, that's fair. But yeah, so we see Monica waking up in this other dimension. She's in a hospital of some sort, and wakes up to see Maria Rambeau kind of looking over her, and that is of course her mother who passed away while she had blipped, so she never got to see her mom. You know, she never got to say goodbye. So she has this incredibly emotional moment, and as she's like calling her mom, it's clear Maria has no idea what she's talking about, and is even questions the word mom, and so there's this confusion initially. And there's actually, I don't know if you caught this at all, but there's details in the background that would tell you where they are before you even see the character that enters next. There's like a little X on the screen in the background. And there's the details in the score. But so we do see a figure walk by, and the voice is what made me happiest about this, because the character is Beast and the actor is Kelsey Grammer. And that is awesome. That is one of there's been few Marvel roles that have been casted better than Kelsey Grammer as Beast. So absolutely loved that. So we see that she is in the universe, the existing universe of the X-Men, because we get the score from Days of Future Past and from X2 X-Men United thrown into this scene. We see Maria stand up, reveal that she is in her own superhero costume. Beast refers to her as Binary. That is a really interesting choice for this character, by the way. Binary is an energy copy of Carol Danvers, who does not speak. So they have changed that character drastically. But so, Beast throws out the theory, like kind of jokingly, like my theory is that you came from another dimension and you're trapped here. Of course, that's impossible. And so he tells Binary Charles wants an update. We know Charles is alive in this universe. He walks off through that big iconic X door. And then Binary is left there with Monica. She asks what's going on. Monica says something I won't repeat. But that's the end of it. One more thing about Binary I want to point out, though, too, is if you notice, her costume includes the bangles that were sort of the whole.
I didn't catch that, but I read your recap.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, and that was the aforementioned MacGuffin of this movie, is they were after the Bangles the whole time. They refer to them as quantum bands, by the way, which we don't have time for me to get off into all of that. But so they do have
after the Bengals, the Texans.
How dare you, sir? But yeah, so we see that that's a part of her costume. This universe is the X-Men universe, in which we have not seen any other superheroes besides mutants. Kamala uses the bangle to kind of unlock her mutant ability in the MCU. So I guess I should say on 616. So in this universe now, it's possible that Maria Rambeau is a mutant.
1999.
Sure. In whatever Earth this is, it's possible that this Maria Rambeau, who goes by Binary, is a mutant who used these bangles to unlock her mutant ability. And that's where we leave things off. We have Monica trapped in the X-Men universe, and the Young Avengers forming on Earth 616. So really, really exciting. Now you understand why, coming off of that and going into Loki and ending on what Loki ended on, as opposed to this, I was kind of like, I kind of wanted something bigger. I wanted something more. But again, looking back on it now, I still like it. Yeah, that was a wild weekend for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Anything else on the Marvels before we wrap things up here today?
No, I mean, I hope that the performance of the movie doesn't derail whatever they had planned. I know a lot of it's up in the air for various reasons anyway. I don't think, people are probably making too much of it. I think Marvel's still going to find a way to succeed, even if they do, have to change a few things. Like, the fact that they were able to have this many hits in a row until now is already incredible. If they space it out more, I think that makes sense. But yeah, I wouldn't. I think it's fine to be critical. I just don't understand why people take such glee in it sometimes. That's all.
It's really weird, and there's obviously a lot of other elements at play with this movie in particular that we won't get into. But listen, if you think the next Avengers movie isn't going to pass $1 billion, then you're crazy. Like it's going to happen. It's like those are just going to print money. So we'll see when we get to that point. I think that's what it comes down to. Is Marvel just needs to get to that point, and everything will be business as usual once we get to the next Avengers.
By the way, if you are for some reason someone listening to a Marvel podcast who doesn't watch the Disney Plus shows, then I recommend the next time that a Marvel movie comes out, you go see it at the Alamo Draft House, because they do very nice pre-shows kind of recapping everything you need to know leading into the movie, which is also why I thought it was interesting that while they recapped Captain Marvel and mentioned she was a mutant, oh no, they didn't mention she was a mutant. That's the part. They mentioned everything else, but they didn't mention the mutant part. And I was like, okay, so I don't know if that's because they don't know if it doesn't matter in this movie and they know that, or whether that was.
Yeah. And to their credit, it didn't really matter. Just kind of makes that sort of tertiary, connection later on. But yeah, so that is really cool. I didn't know that. You can also watch Marvel Legends on Disney Plus. They do release things like that.
Yeah, if you don't watch the Disney Plus shows, just watch the Disney Plus show.
Sure. Well, you can also watch them on YouTube at this point. They've been releasing all of them there too. But yeah, so that's another option. All right, we can go ahead and take the banner down as we wrap things up here. The ears are coming off as well.
The ears are coming off. Yes, I'm taking off the merchandise as we have 13 minutes left before our merchandise show, Barely Necessities, takes to this very channel. So we have to.
Yeah. Seamless plug there. That was well done. Yeah, Barely Necessities coming up right after us if you're watching live. Disney Trivia Live, I believe, also coming tonight, so you can check that out on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. For those of you listening, we don't know when we'll be back. Like we said, we have What If coming this holiday season. So, normally I would say if we have a long layoff, we would probably do a news catch up between now and then. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that long of a layoff. If it is the holiday season, that's now. So I can't imagine. Can't imagine what if is that far off. So we will be back soon enough. We'll get back into our craziness, our games, our drafts, all of that stuff. Anything else, Kyle, before we wrap things up?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, then, if you could just go ahead and vamp for me. Never mind. I found the outro here for us.
All right.
So, bye, everyone.
Bye.